Thank you.
All right, let's get started. For the record, my name is Mike Peterson, Mayor of City of Cottonwood Heights. It is Tuesday, October 19th, 2021. This is the work session again for the City of Cottonwood Heights. Hopefully you all have an agenda in front of you, and we will begin by a review of our business meeting agenda, which has a couple unique things. After a welcome and pledge, we have some acknowledgements.
Turn that off already. Turn it off again. Sorry.
That's all right.
It's a troublemaker.
On item 3.1 is Brooksy, which is the half marathon sponsors, will be here to, I think you all know that I think it's $1 per entrant is donated to the Cottonwood Heights Parks Recreation Foundation, and that money goes to sponsor children and family who have the inability to pay. Like if you personally know someone who has had an incident in their family, they can't work, you go to that foundation and they'll pay their membership to participate in youth soccer and classes and membership. They keep it fairly confidential so that when the people come to participate, no one knows that they're sponsored. So that money will be presented to representatives of the service area today. Then also this year, Utah Recreation Parks Association, which is the state association for that Parks and Recreation, will be here to recognize the surface area as the outstanding recreation department for communities, I think under 50,000, but over 15,000, something like that. Anyway, they like to do it here in public, and we're honored to have them here, and they can present that to them. That's quite an accomplishment on their part. We then have citizen comments, followed by public comments with respect to our short-term rental amendment. Mike, you want to say about that?
We introduced this last meeting. This is just one small aspect of our efforts on short-term rentals, is to just clean up our existing ordinance. Most of the proposed changes are clarifications and streamlining the way the ordinance reads, clarifying explicitly that short-term rentals are illegal in single-family areas, modifying the definition of a short-term rental to just say fewer than 30 days, which matches the state code, and then adding the potential penalties for violation right within the body of the ordinance rather than somewhere else in the city code. So that's the summary of what's proposed with this particular text amendment.
I think we went through that previously, and I think we all felt very comfortable with that, and it cleaned it up and clarified some ambiguity. So, all right. Then we have two staff quarter reports. The first is from Scott regarding our finances. Any questions, Scott, before we go into that? I think it's pretty straightforward. Anything new or no surprises? Okay. Hopefully some good news. The second item is the UFA report. Assistant Chief Riley will not be able to be here tonight, so we have Captain Ken Aldridge will be here to present that report. A couple things of interest regarding UFA, if he may mention, if not, we can ask about it, is that Chief Peterson is retiring at the first of the year, and so there's currently a committee together from UFA chaired by Mayor Daly from Holiday to go through that process. It'll probably be an internal process first, and if they do not find someone internally, they'll look externally. And the other thing of interest, and we'll bring this back for a report to us separately, is that our two fire stations, which are actually owned by Salt Lake County, are going through a seismic retrofit, which is important to us as a city, especially if those ever are turned over to the city. That would be a major capital expense. So if they don't mention it, we'll bring them back Chief Robinson, I think it is.
Yeah, I think we'll plan on having them in November
Yeah,
sometime.
yeah.
Give us what's it.
We have that. And then we have some action items. First is 7.1 regarding short-term rental, which we talked about. And if there's no major questions, we'll proceed on that. Item 7.2 is resolution 2021-51, ratifying a bid and awarding a construction contract for crack seal and slurry seal project. Matt, I assume that's all part of our 5-year plan?
Yes, sir. This is a portion of year 4. We'll be bringing something back to you in a few, in January for the rest of year 4, but correct.
And I think that's been a real accomplishment by this council. And I know as a mayor, at least, I get a lot of positive feedback on our efforts and how much we're doing throughout the valley. And I think we'll be looking at the new 5-year plan.
Next
Next
city council, I believe, November.
Yeah, I believe the next.
Yeah, so
city
you'll be able to
council.
see that and have some input for the next 5-year plan. Item 7.3 is resolution 2021-52, appointment to the planning commission. And
This is not a new appointment, just a modification of the existing terms. It's standard practice when we appoint a new commissioner to appoint them as the alternate and move any existing alternate to a regular member, just from an experience perspective. For our last 2 appointments, we did not do that. We forgot to do that. So this is going back and making Commissioner Eveler, who's our newest member, the alternate, and moving Commissioner Lucy Anderson, who's currently an alternate, to be a regular member. No,
And I assume we have good balance between districts.
yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's the plan.
And it's likely that in June, we'll make some changes too, because one of our commissioners
Yeah.
the time will be up, so.
Yeah. Good. All right, appreciate that. And item 7.4 is resolution 2021-53, entry into consulting agreement for the update of the moderate income affordable housing plan, which I think is required by the state. So who,
Yes, it is. A couple years ago, we did an actual affordable housing master plan, which the state requires. And then annually, we have to do a specific progress report and update our housing data and submit that to the state. We did it last year with GSBS and are proposing to use it.
and it's only a couple $1,000s. I mean, it's still money.
Yeah, $1,400.
Fairly economical.
And may I just say something that I've been in several of the Utah League of Cities and Towns meetings. There's some that are not getting this done, and it's causing a lot of angst amongst our state representatives. So I'm just glad that we're moving this forward. We've always been on time and had the housing plans updated. And so it's an important thing because all the cities are being looked at regarding this plan.
Any questions on that agenda?
I would just say it's sad to see Chief Peterson retire. He was such a professional and so appreciated.
I agree wholeheartedly. I don't think I've ever met someone as well organized administratively. And again, I admire it because he always has a good process on any issue and follows that out. And so it's maybe being a member of that board.
He was a real
But
asset.
Yep, good example. And but it's been almost 5 years. Yeah, he was selected. All right, coming back to our work session, staff reports. The first item is Butlerville Days discussion. In your packet, I think you had a summary of an evaluation from the committee. We would like to have a little discussion today to make sure the council is comfortable, and Scott's our liaison for that. So who's going to turn over to Ann or Paula or who?
So Anne met with the Butlerville Days Committee on October 7th to evaluate the 2021 Butlerville Days and also to see what the committee wanted to do for 2022. So Anne is here to discuss that, their opinions and also to get your thoughts and input for 2022.
Okay, go ahead, Ann.
Like Paula said, we met on the 7th. This meeting is very important to the committee because we discussed everything that happened at the event. for those that may not understand or don't know, the Butlerville Days Committee is made up of volunteers and who put in many hours to put this event together. A lot of them, I think I've only have one new one this year, so a lot of them have been there for many, many years. It also has city staff and Cottonwood Heights Rec Center staff to help us with the committee. Each person on the committee oversees an event or area. I truly appreciate all committee members for their help and commitment to Butlerville Days. I also appreciate the support we received from Cottonwood Heights Rec Center, the police department, Public Works, new city council. I could not live without them, and city staff. And when I say city staff, I want to make sure that planning, Mike Johnson's team filled so many phone calls and takes so many payments for me. Accounting, I could not do this without Canny Tanner. That now we have someone new, but Dave runs numbers over and over and over for me to make sure all my budget comes out clearly. I just want to make sure everybody, and of course, my supervisor. The committee this year feels the overall event was extremely successful. They have a few recommendations that I'll get to in just a second. I just want to go over this year's some of the things that happened this year. After we had a extremely hard year dealing with COVID and we didn't have Butlerville Days, my goal going into this was to bring a little cheer to the residents of Cottonwood Heights by having an almost free event. I am proud to say we were able to pull this off. The committee got together and tried figuring this out. The only cost to residents was pickleball and the vendors, anything you brought there. At one point, I said this, and the U City Council thought even the vendors' food was going to be free. It was kind of funny. So a few of the highlights was the parade, with having that band from the Canyon School District was a lifesaver. It just made that parade. The Arts Council, they did this painting in the park, and we had 100 people attend that to do this painting of a rooster. They want to come back. They've got great ideas of how to even make it even better. Historic Committee and Parks and Trails Open Space, they had this historic walk. So to give you a little background, putting this together and trying to keep the cost down and everything, I reached out to all the committees and said, what do you want? Do you want to do something? Do you want to bring something? And they all jumped and said, Parks and Trails, yes. The historics, yes, let's do something. So it just kind of became more of a community feel. But the historic walk that Gail Conger led, and the person on Parks and Trails, sorry, her name just went blank. Yeah. They had a dozen people there, and they want to continue it. Whether it be the same walk or different walks, that will continue. The rocks hidden in the parks was fun. The planning department went and hid them for me. The art council painted them. It was actually no cost to the city. I had the rocks donated. Will that come back? Probably not. We hid 90 rocks, but it was time consuming for our art council to paint. So it may have been a one-time thing. We'll see how that goes. Stage placement. We've always wanted to move the stage. Me and Chris and Jim Monty always wanted to move it, but it was really hard to do. We didn't know how, if it would interfere with the fireworks. Well, we thought we're messing everything else up. Let's just try it out and see what happens. It worked. It was easier getting people off the stage. The bands had a closer place to park. Public Works was able to get them through or make adjustments on that, but it worked, and we want to continue with the stage in that place. The police statement at the meeting was that this year's tone of the event was different without the carnival. It was uneventful. So I don't think there was anything that you guys attended to.
No, all those sound like negatives, but they're really positives.
Yeah.
When it comes to the place. So, no.
Yeah, it was very uneventful, which is good.
An event, it's uneventful. I love it.
Which on their term
Yeah,
is
on that,
really,
yeah,
really
yeah.
good.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Makes me happy. So the recommendations for the committee moving forward is I have to bring back chairs in front of the stage. That was a cost saving method that we took, but we had too many complaints. Bingo, they would like to go 15 and older. We had a lot of complaints. Little kids just do not want to play bingo that long. Inflatables, keep them free if possible. I've got to find more volunteers. It's an ongoing problem, especially when it's around the 24th. Nobody wants to, and the event's gotten so much fun. Nobody wants to volunteer. They just want to come to the event. So, and then the residents of the committee voted on this. I do not vote, and our staff doesn't vote. We allow that the residents vote that's on this committee. It is, I always feel that it's their event. I want to know what they think. The residents would like to bring the carnival back. It was a majority vote. They are also asking if we can have the carnival on Thursday, only the carnival, nothing else in the field. Friday, everything else out would come back in the field, and Saturday, everything else would be in the field, just like the old Butlerville days, not this year. I think that's all I have. That was their main concerns. And now I'd just like to hear from the council.
Okay, well, I have lots of comments, but that's only because I've been involved from the first one all the way through. But Scott, you're the liaison.
Yeah, the carnival, one of the reasons for going to 3 days, that would make it a lot easier to book them. They're a lot more willing to do a 3-day stay, set up and tear down rather than do the 2 days that we've had in the past. But it was fairly enthusiastic about bringing them back. Hopefully we can keep them uneventful. But I think, there was some scrambling, the bingo. I mean, I was there, it got hurricaned out.
Can't you control the weather next year?
That was always, I was gonna say it was District 1's job, but Donna originally took that from District 3, but they scrambled to put it together and pulled it off the next day, which was great.
With the city help, the city
Yeah.
council, yeah.
Yeah, so, but, definitely want to continue, but we do need to get some good solid volunteers that want to maybe take over an event. I mean,
I have a couple of volunteers leaving this next year,
yeah,
so
I mean, Lorraine Turner did the pie eating contest for years and years and years until it was just too much and she got old and,
Whoa,
It got
whoa,
to be
whoa,
too
whoa,
much.
whoa, nothing wrong with age.
so it was, but sometimes, but we appreciated everything she did. We have, we've had other people that have been on there for 10+ years. It is good to have some
New blood.
new perspectives and new ideas. I had my time away and I'm back on, so.
The carnival, the positive of that too is it is a net positive, correct?
yes.
Yeah,
That is a positive. I don't know how much that changes our event.
Well, the challenge with the carnival from the beginning, and Robbie relate to this, when we visited other cities who had events like this, you can go to one and you literally have a kind of a carny feel, which is kind of negative. So when we interviewed the first carnival people, we really wanted to look for people who would provide a quality carnival event. And we've been pretty lucky to have that, I think. But that's the challenge because you've got only 3 or 4 carnivals that are even possible to come.
2, there's 2. Yeah.
Only 2. And so it's to
I
make
think
sure.
there's some more, but there's only 2 animal to look at because they're of reputation
Right,
for what.
that carny feel.
The recommendation would be the 2 that I know of,
Okay,
yeah.
so you've got to find the right one, but I, for one, think it adds a flavor to it. It's different. I originally was, from the very beginning, had real hesitation, but by meeting with them and being there and walking behind the events and meeting the representatives, if you get the right carnival, it can be positive. If it's 2 days or 3 days, I can go either way on that. Still, the highlight to me is the fireworks. I think that's really what brings most of the people in, and that's always outstanding. The stage location, moving it to the opposite end was a highlight. Of course, the parade, moving it to Bengal, I think was a plus.
Yeah.
Great turnout. Like you, I'd like to into the expertise and the feel of all those volunteers and any other feedback we're getting. So
I would add to the parade, the marching band was a real plus.
Yep.
Music, the more music we can carry through the whole parade, I think really
That's
adds
a
to
good
the.
idea.
It's
creative
just
ways to-
really hard when it's close to the 24th. It's super, I mean, before we went into it, a week before, we only had, I think, 30 entries. And at the last minute, I think we jumped to 20 more. I think she said we had about 50 plus
But the
entries.
marching band from the high school was a real plus. What's ironical is that did not even exist a couple of years ago, that band.
No, it didn't. It
And
started up in
The
2020.
person who started that was teacher of the year, and we recognized her, went to her class on teacher of the year, which is separate, but yeah, that's the real.
Even if it's like music streaming from a vehicle.
Yeah.
Keep the
Yep.
music, keep the energy high.
I agree.
I guess I just have a few. The food. My husband and girls and I tried to get some food towards firework time, and the lines were so long that my husband and I actually had to go to our car, get in our car, drive somewhere, and then try to race back here to watch them. We were able to, but I don't know whether it's they run out of food or we don't have enough food or what, but that's just something that I really noticed.
Yeah, and it's something that I can't control on that. I wish I could.
Is it a quantity? We need more food trucks?
Well,
and we can't get them,
I think
or-
this year, at the beginning, I was asked by a couple of committee members not to have as many. And then at the last minute, I was like, no, because I didn't think we were going to have as many people. So at the last minute, I found a few more to throw in there. But I think we were only maybe 4 shy, because I had one no show at they could make it. So the one person that serves one of them my most couldn't make it. They had a family emergency. So that is always something on our mind of quicker food. And there is actually 3 food trucks that I won't bring back. And one of them was that reason. They were too slow. So we're always taking notes, and we're always looking at that, how to improve those lines. Also how to pull those tents back a little bit further to keep the lines moving. And that's also a question and stuff that we looked at is fast turn. How fast can you turn around? So
Especially
we'll
right
keep that.
before the fireworks. Yeah. you're
Yeah,
right.
and we'll keep that in mind of moving forward, like, that will be one of our first goals is how fast is your turnaround when we're looking at that.
Yeah, so just give you a sense, I literally was able to walk to our car in the middle school parking lot, drive to the Pie Pizzeria, order at the counter, get my food, and drive back to make it to the fireworks before I would have been able to get to the front of the line
Yeah.
because my daughter stayed.
Yeah,
So, and I know
Yeah.
that's not, that's no.
No, but
I'm
I
not
like
saying
this input. I like all
Good
inputs
feedback.
because that will be one of my number 1 questions now.
And the Pie does have a mobile unit.
No, that's,
It's
yeah.
always at the Arts Festival downtown.
Is how fast their turnaround. That will be my
Yeah,
first
and that is-
first
it's
question.
really-
Like feedback to those trucks, I've always thought it would be smart to have tax included $5 price. Like $5 buys your meal and a drink, because if they less time making change, just get the
Yeah, you know
people in
that
and out of there.
And then I guess my comment, I guess I'm getting older, and so not having the carnival there was a little bit nice. So to go from 2 to 3, I don't know. I think there's a population of our community that might not want to have the carnival 3 days because, as the chief can attest to more than I mean, the number of kids that we get here just to do the carnival. I mean, the number inflates, doesn't it, usually on that last night? I don't know. And so then it ends up it being like a Cottonwood Heights for 24th event to like Salt Lake County. I don't know. I just,
Yeah,
it
Because more of
sounds
a
like,
regional thing,
Yeah.
we draw a lot of people outside. And that was our fear when we very first looked at the carnival, is getting too much of the non-community feel.
but I mean, the committee is who you lean on there. I'm just giving you my perspective. I guess the last is I really like the yoga day. So if there were like another day of yoga or something,
Good.
like more is always better of that, maybe 2 times instead of 1 time. I really thought that was fun. I didn't do it this year, but I did do it the prior
We
year.
did the next day. We had yoga on the one day, and then we had high impact aerobics. I had more people show up at the high impact aerobics than I did yoga. And so Trader Joe's sponsors that, and they want to do that. So I can check with the rec center and see if we can do 2 yogas.
And with that, the pickleball tournament related to active participation was full for, what, 5 or 6 nights?
Yeah, it was the biggest it's ever been, almost too big is what I heard,
Oh,
so.
It was great.
And I've got a question. It's always timing is an issue. I look at the calendar, Sunday's the 24th. So would you go, how many days are you thinking of going again?
Your recommendation would be from what you guys decide, if it was the 3 days or if it was just the 2 days. I would prefer not to do the whole week. It pretty much killed me.
Maybe-
It was fun, but it was tough. But I will do whatever, the committee and you guys recommend and moving forward. But if we did Thursday, Friday, and Saturday is what the committee would like, and Thursday would only be the carnival.
And it's been more geared towards the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, rather than the 24th.
Right,
You're
so
not gonna see it Monday,
and it
Tuesday,
also
Wednesday, it's gonna
depends
be
on
Thursday,
that,
Friday.
it also depends on what day I can get the carnival, so we try and push it closest we can to the 24th. But it also is, we're not the highest in revenues, and so we're always like, put on the last of the list of if they're gonna come or not. Adding another day may put us higher up on that list to get the weekend that we really want. But I can't guarantee anything.
But they can come, the carnival can come for one day, did you say?
They won't come for one day. It
Okay.
has to be 2, minimum 2.
and maybe.
But
3.
they've been pushing, the carnival company's been pushing me for 3 for years, ever since we started with them.
It's tough to set up, I'm sure.
It's a lot of work to set up
And tear
and tear it
down.
down. Yeah, for them to just waste a day of not getting some kind of
I
revenue.
wonder if you could spread out the people. I don't, do you think the kids, do you think you'd spread them out
The
over 3
rides?
days? No, yeah, the rides, like, do you think the kids would, instead of all coming on Saturday night, shoulder to shoulder kids, do you think they'd come on?
What
Thursday?
you could do
No, I don't
to, I mean, we try and keep them over, yeah. They wouldn't be able to bring another ride on. I mean, that just,
No, I just mean you're having the rides, right? 3 nights now instead of
yeah,
2.
I mean, that's what they're asking.
Yeah. I was just wondering if it sort of would defray the number of kids on Saturday. Would they then go to Thursday night? You'd like amortize them over 3 nights instead of.
Oh, no, you can do specials. You can do a special on Thursday night.
Yeah.
for-
Incentivize coming in.
Yeah, you can do a special on Thursday night, and a lot of them, what they'll do is they'll do all rights are only one, so you pay $1 for all the rights, and then you get the people that can afford, or you're looking at, households that can actually afford it, go on the one night versus the other 2 nights.
I like that.
There's all kinds of things that you can play around with that. It depends on what you're looking and trying to do.
Well, I think we can negotiate too with what types of rides to attract what type of clientele a little bit. So we. try
A little
and-
bit, when you're working with them, they have certain rides, and they'll tell you if you want to bring them all, or if you want to bring these many, or that, yeah.
And my concern still, and I think you're saying that too, is to not get the carny feel. Just to
No,
keep
and
it- Keep it as part of.
I
the
think having that off to the back and not mix through the whole thing helps with that. I do.
That's why the other events really help to mitigate.
Because it's off to the back, yeah.
So next year is the 21st, 22nd, 23rd?
I don't know. It depends on, it's either that weekend or
I
the
think
next weekend.
We decided last year, I think, for a few years in a row, didn't we?
No, I have to put it out to the carnivals, and then they get back with me with the dates they can make it.
I thought as a council, you wanted to know a few years in advance, and last year we looked at some dates.
Yeah, we did a couple of years ago, but again, if we're taking out to the carnivals, we always figure out what they are doing, and then they get back with me, but we do try and do it one of the last 2 weekends.
So hopefully it's the 21st, 22nd, 23rd.
I think that would.
So my last one is, with what I'm going to probably say, but I'm curious, how much of the taffy ended up in the gutter versus in the bags with kids? Maybe Matt knows. I mean, I don't know about you, but I would throw it and the gutter had water in it, and
That only
there's
bothers
no
a small
alternative.
percentage
My
of-
friend owns Sweet Candy Company, so I don't want to dishonor Candy and say we should look at an alternative, but I don't know. Did anybody else get really sticky with
I
it
wasn't-
melting in your hands?
I wasn't involved with, oh, you mean throwing?
Throwing it.
Oh, yeah.
Writing, yeah.
Some of them did congeal a little bit.
Okay.
The heat was, but I don't know if we could do a softer,
My
and
husband
more
was-
friendly.
I guess there is probably none. I mean,
My husband was a huge asset because he could throw to those people on the back
oh,
row.
he threw it really
Yeah,
far.
those were challenging. I kind of appreciated it.
Well, my biggest concern is that we make sure we throw it off the road so no one walks into the.
Yeah,
road.
yeah.
Because
Yeah.
up in Brighton a few years ago, we had a parade and that happened. A
Mm.
young child was hit because they threw it out in front. So that's my biggest concern, but kids love it. It's-
Yeah, I mean, it's nice wax paper and stuff. I just felt bad because I tossed it in the water and I knew Matt's team was gonna have to pick it up. I just wondered how much ended up in the gutter.
Did you need more practice throwing?
Probably, yeah.
No, but some of mine toward the end were
Oh, I
clumps.
just,
Any further comments? And again, I think the committee will continue to update the council going forward. How negotiations are with the carnivals and the dates. So you'll be coming back again, right, Tim?
Throw chocolate.
Yeah.
Do you want me to look into 3 or 2?
Yeah.
3?
But I think you can, those hours can be sensitive on the first
Yeah.
couple days.
Oh, yeah, I would like. to-
Because the other thing for the council's
It would be in the
information, that it has a tremendous impact on the residents around the park.
Yeah.
And we've always made sure that we've given notifications to them, let them know, so they're used to it, so.
No, it had to be in the evening on those. Yeah.
Well, it's an evening, but it's not too late.
Yeah, and this one was also different because I know a couple of the booth vendors were really concerned on Friday because it was like there was not nearly as many. The carnival brought a lot more people there on the earlier
For the
days.
food. And you'll attract more food vendors.
But,
Well, on Friday this year, we didn't even have the inflatables because we were trying to save.
right,
the
and
cost on
so
that.
it was pretty dead on Friday. Most of them found out, Saturday was a big day, but for any vendors that are coming, having something like that going
Well,
on
and
helps
I
them.
had a lot of vendors not want to come because of the carnival. I had sponsors that not wanted to sponsor because we didn't have the carnival because they really didn't think we were going to have the impact that we did. Even though I told them we will have the impact on Saturday, and we did have numbers on Saturday.
All right, well, there's some feedback for you, and that gives you some general direction, and you'll hopefully continue to, again, communicate with the administration and the council going forward, yeah. So I think it's a positive event and good evaluation, so,
Thank you, Ann. You always do a great job.
Thanks. All right.
all right, thanks, Ann.
Just in case I haven't told you 3 times this week. You can call it Carmel if you want to.
Never too much.
All right, referring back to your agenda, item B, I think if you remember on our retreat, one of the action items was a review of our nuisance ordinance to see if there's anything in that, because I know as a mayor and as a councilor before, seemed to always be a lot of questions about why we can't do more to impact some of the nuisances going on in our community. And so staff has reviewed that and has a recommendation of at least one modification. So is that Shane and Robbie, you gonna present this, or Tim?
Yeah, I can do it.
Yeah.
So we followed your guidance and we checked with other cities and we compared our current nuisance ordinance as it stands. We found it to be pretty robust the way it is. There isn't anything that we would necessarily change or add. We looked at what other cities do and what they have and the wordings, and ours is pretty good. And our officers enforce it very well. I mean, we still get complaints from time to time, and we have to deal with those as they come up. The only one that we thought we could actually improve upon, that we get a lot of complaints on and people are most passionate about, are the animals and vehicles left in hot or cold cars, mostly hot cars in the summertime, in parking lots and in stores. We have an ordinance now that addresses it, but the proposed ordinance is a little more specific and talks about what the firefighter or the police officer can do to remove the animal that is in jeopardy or is suffering, and defines that a little bit better, and then provides a penalty for it. And it also requires the officer to leave a note telling them who broke the window and remove the dog. But I sent a copy of it out. It should be in your council packet, but other than that, we are open to any suggestions that you have on any other areas that you think we need to look at. But the big ones, the weed ordinances and the garbage and the cars, all that is fine. It works the way it is. And our enforcement of that, it seems to work. And so we don't see any point in changing it.
In council, in your packet is a proposed language change regarding animals in vehicles. We just described under what conditions action can be taken by public safety, fire, or police to remove the animal. I guess that's what it is, right?
Correct. We have the current ordinance, and then in red is the proposed change as we would offer to amend it.
And I noticed you mentioned in the memo modifying the penalty, but yet I don't see anything proposed that modifies the penalty. So the penalty just stays the same, but it's just the action of when you can take the action.
Well, anything that doesn't specifically specify a penalty, Jake, correct me if I'm wrong, is an infraction. But we have the ability
It's
to,
a class B misdemeanor.
pardon me,
Class B, I think.
if it doesn't specify. a
I'm
penalty.
sorry, Shane, I can't hear you.
I think it's a class B misdemeanor under, we have a provision. in-
Class
Class
B.
B, miss.
I think so.
Do we have to specify that as a B?
We have a ordinance that says that if a penalty isn't specified, what it's a class B misdemeanor. It's in Title I, I think. We'll take a look at that and make sure.
But that would be the recommendation, is that it not be an infraction that can make it a B. And if that's. what it
Well, anyway, I
is.
think, looking at the proposed, and again, we can look further into any other nuisance ordinance items that the council has concern about, because again, I will admit, I seem to have less comments in recent times, but I know a couple of years ago, it seems like I got one once a week. Of why you as a city can't do something with this yard or with this vehicle in front or construction material. But I think what you're saying is all of that we can deal with. It's just a matter of,
We can deal with it, but part of it is the philosophy that we've adopted in the enforcement of that. We don't like to use a big stick approach
Okay.
on the first contact with
sure.
people. We
Yeah, I
like
agree.
to.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here.
Okay,
So I was given a ticket for a Class B misdemeanor with no warning before. So I would disagree with that statement. So I would recommend that if we're going to be talking about this, that we should not give, it should be codified. If what you're saying is what you do, I think we should codify that. The first one is a warning before the Class B misdemeanor.
Well, I believe there was more to that situation than you've just represented. And I mean,
I don't think so, Chief, because I know what was taught to me. One of your officers came to me and then I got a ticket in the mail. So if there was something that your officers wanted to tell me, then that's what they should tell me. And so if there's more that I'm not representing, then maybe that should have been represented to me.
did we ever bring the dog back on previous occasions?
No,
Never did?
no.
Did the owner?
So we don't need to talk about it
Well, I
here.
know, but you.
But I think
brought
it's
it up and
important.
brought
I
it to the
did bring it
table.
up and I asked him to include this on the agenda, that we talk about what happens for animal at large if the first offense should be a Class B misdemeanor. Like, didn't I ask you? to put
We
that on
talked
the
about
agenda?
that in the retreat. Just talked
And-
about in the retreat.
Okay. So this is on the agenda today, right?
Sure.
So if that's what you say, I'd like to see it codified. I don't think that's a bad thing.
so that's feedback to you and Robert to look at that and see if, I mean, if it's a personal thing, if it's a personal thing, we need to look at it outside, but when it comes to the ordinance, if it's unclear and saying it's different than practice, we need to look at that and ask for that consideration and look at it and come back with a recommendation.
I would have Tim reflect back on what was transpiring within the city at the time that Christine was cited, see if there wasn't some messaging there. It's a common threat in this city.
So let me back up for just a second. When we get complaints from and individuals that want to press charges, it becomes a little bit different than just a warning. And that was an issue that occurred in these types of situations. So we can look at the wording on this and evaluate it, but
I'm sure you believe that, Tim, but you're gonna have to step back and do some honest
okay,
reflection.
I guess all I'm asking
If
for
things are
is
gonna
that
get better,
if we're
okay.
going to say something that we should codify that first there's a warning. I think it's a stretch to go from nothing to a Class B misdemeanor where somebody needs to hire an attorney and go to court. I just think that that's a pretty wide stretch. And if that's what the chief is saying, then I don't think it's a hard thing to ask for. Any of my neighbors would agree with that. This is a personal thing that has happened to not only me, to others, and that's why I'm bringing it up.
No, I think, and I'll agree conceptually that it's like a speeding ticket. Okay, sometimes I know that we talk about the value of giving warnings. Sometimes they're just as effective as the ticket. So I guess we'd ask Tim and Rob to look at, not looking at individual cases, but look at what we want to do as a city. You can take that as feedback, is if our direction to have some consistency and what is our standard, as Robbie just said, is to not come in with a heavy stick, but to come in and work with the resident on the nuisance code violation.
and we can look at that. I will say,
Unless
though,
there's some other condition that you're.
I will say there's some that, for example, up on our trails with people that have off-leash dogs up there, we get very, very concerned individuals that want people to be cited immediately up there, because we get numerous complaints. I met with some residents about that this past year. And so if you want to have a warning, we can look at that and we'll evaluate that and bring it back to you. There's some that would say, don't do warnings because it doesn't bring people into compliance.
I'm just
So
saying,
it's a fine line.
but I'm saying, what is it? I'm hearing two sides.
I will speak from the other side, which is my husband got pulled over by the police the other day. They don't know him and he got a warning. And his reflection on our CHPD went up enormously. That is a community field, right? And within the same household, we've had two different diametrically opposing feelings. And it's just, who do we want to be? Do we want to be a community where we're supporting each other, or do we want to have the stick, to your point? And so I love the CHPD. I just gave it a strong example of my support for them and our family support. But then I have another one, which was not the same feeling. And I know that other people have experienced the same thing, and there are people that same person, we can complain and complain about each other and take pictures and send them and get the same people in trouble. We should be working to create those bonds within our neighborhood. And that didn't do that.
Divisive, I think.
But, and again, I think what we're saying is that conceptually, that's what we should be doing. At the same time, we have to not tie the hands of an officer if there's certain criteria that reaches a certain level, certain criteria, and what is that? So even the officers have an understanding of how they should respond. So
The initial question that you posed, Mayor, was that you get complaints because people say, why aren't you doing something about this house? And what I began to answer was we tried to take an approach where we talk to the people, get them to come into a voluntary compliance, and then we keep escalating it until we have to take other actions. If there's a specific case that you want to identify, right, and talk about, I will do that. I don't know that it's appropriate to have that discussion in this forum, but I will be happy at any time to go over the facts of an individual case.
I think what we're saying is not look at individual case right now. You can take that as feedback, but what is the philosophy of the department when it comes to dealing with code violations? Is the philosophy to work with the resident, with warnings, as long as there's an understanding and blah, 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 and, you know, there's communication. If that's the philosophy, maybe that should be somehow in the language or somehow, so there's a clear understanding that we're not getting mixed messages. Yeah.
Well, this kind of gets back to one of the issues when I hear a complaint like this, a lot of it's coming from someone who's making, it's communication back and forth. It's communication between the officers and both the complainant and the alleged offender, however you want to do that. And I know we've started what you say, you have a meeting, the code enforcement meeting, collaboration meeting. I'm hoping that is helping whatever the language says more consistent, because usually when there's why aren't you moving fast enough, or why aren't you doing this, or why are you harassing? It tends to get down to communication back and forth between the different parties. And so,
and bottom line is we want the offender to understand, to be educated and change the behavior. I mean, I've sat with an officer, with a resident and a complainer regarding construction material in the yard, and over a couple meetings, we worked to get that resolved, and I've done that 2 or 3 times. So I applaud that direction. We just want to make sure that we're consistent in its application. And that's, I know there's some judgment involved, but is there any language that can help define that process a little bit? Or if it's not in the ordinance, is it in the operational policy? We're just sending that back for some consideration, and then let us know.
Okay.
All right, let's move forward. Next item, Udot reimbursement agreement. Matt, you gonna do that?
Yes, sir. Let me pull up.
Wasatch Boulevard in Bengal.
This is on the corner of Wasatch and Fort Union.
Oh, yeah, that's my.
So I'm sure you are all well aware of snow season and issues that go on up in this area. At this intersection in particular, when we have cars traveling going from when they're traveling from west going up the canyon, Big Cottonwood Canyon, by the way, is up to your right. When they're doing that, and when they're coming down, this intersection going up Big Cottonwood Canyon gets really congested. One of the issues we run into is cars coming eastbound here on Fort Union. What they'll do is in the winter, this place they'll create their own lanes. So we'll have 4 cars across trying to go across Wasatch to go up Big Cottonwood Canyon. And when they do this, obviously it creates a problem because it becomes a log jam right in here where you can't get through. There's only one lane. And so we end up with accidents. We end up with cars in the intersection because they have to start merging. We have cars, and then when the lights change, so you can see the snowball effect that occurs here. It's just it's a real problem. So last year, our police department, along with Udot, sat down and kind of put a little put some thought into this. And one of the things they came up with, if you've been up there in the winter last year, you'll notice there are candlestick poles. They're temporary candlestick poles that are in the ground that are laid out to channel traffic into a single lane, which then in turn goes across the street into a single lane. And also here going north along Wasatch, there's candlestick poles along this turn lane here. It's the same concept that happens over here. Cars will travel in this direction, and then we'll get 2 cars abreast right here, and they'll be trying to turn to go up the canyon.
a double right.
Yeah, they'll try to make a double right for themselves. So what
Yeah, that
was,
will cut through Prospector.
yeah, or yes, or they'll cut through Prospector, which that's another issue that we can, that we're working with. So what with these candlestick poles that were installed, like I said, they're temporary. We take them out in the summer, but in the winter we have them back in. They are working, but the way they're working, it works best if there is an officer actually sitting up here ensuring that people aren't trying, because we had to add a few more candlestick poles because they were trying to weave in between the poles. So then they were still creating their own lanes even with that there, but with an officer sitting there and adding a couple more poles, it really enhanced this. And the same thing along here. So now what we are proposing and what UDOT has come forward with to propose is that we make this candlestick location a permanent island, a pork chop, if you will. So if you'll see right here in this section right here, creating a pork chop right here. So that's a raised island, a concrete, it'll be probably a 6 to 8 inch high island right here. And then also doing a curve, the length of this green right here that you see. In both of these locations, this is where the candlestick poles actually are. And then restriping this for the bicycle lanes for bicycles that want to turn and go north, or bicyclists that want to continue on east and going through, as well as here on this portion.
So Matt, would it be just the concrete median then, or would it?
It would be
include-
the concrete median.
Would it include any raised? I've seen, not candlesticks, but anything else that's elevated up for snow plows or anything, or?
No, sir. This island would have the candlesticks installed permanently around
Okay.
the island
So
too.
what, that's what.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. On the island. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And then over here on this would be a raised curb.
With candlesticks down the middle. of
Yes,
that
there'll
as
be
well?
candlesticks
Okay.
on those as well.
How do you get to this, how do you get to the 7-Eleven if you're?
Well, that's the question that does raise itself. And that's where we haven't gone any, we're bringing this forward to the council so you can have this discussion and talk about it. Right now, if we were to do this, the 7-Eleven would be a right in, right out off of Fort Union. So the full access to the 7-Eleven would be here off of Wasatch, where there's a couple of access points where you can get in here.
So if you're in 7-Eleven and you want to go down Fort Union, you have to go out.
You come out and you go here and then you get on the turn lane here.
Can I add something to that?
Oh, yeah, sorry, chief.
One of the problems
in
in
the
the
back.
back with the parking lot at 7-Eleven is that the traffic would pull into the 7-Eleven parking lot and jam up the parking lot, and prevent them from any access at all. So they have a constant flow into that parking lot, prohibiting their business from being conducted. So we're hoping this, and we saw a reduction in that type of traffic by putting up temporary posts.
Could we go in and chat with them and show this and get their feedback before we move forward?
Good.
Yeah, that's what we're here for, is to kind of get your input and also to discuss the cost estimation on this and the cost sharing. Just to finalize, UDOT has estimated this to be around $75,000 somewhere to do this project. They are asking us to pay half, approximately $36,000 to do this.
So, yeah, so I've tried to use this myself, as I'm sure maybe everybody around this table. Because you go into the 7-Eleven and then you want to go left, right?
Down Fort Union.
Down Fort Union, and you can't do it.
Yeah, you can't get out. When it's jammed up, you're not coming out anyway onto.
But it's even still, I feel nervous about crossing 1, 2, 3. So I'm crossing a right turn lane, a straight lane, and a left lane to make that left turn. Even if it's not crowded, it's kind of.
What you're saying, coming out of 7-Eleven
Yeah.
to
make a left to go
Okay,
down towards
okay.
like Lone Star or something.
Yes,
So-
yeah, that is actually a pretty big crossing without this here, making that jump. You have 4 points of conflict before you even get across the street. So it does raise some safety concerns for sure.
So that means that you'd come out of 7-Eleven and then have to cross 2 lanes of traffic and a turn lane to go
You would
left.
cross these 2 lanes of traffic. The
And-
one thing you do
Yeah.
have going for you is you have a stop control here for traffic going south. There's a little bit of a stop control that gives you a bit of a gap to go across into this lane.
And it doesn't help you if you're heading north though. If, anyway, this is a complicated, I don't,
If you're
this is a
heading north.
Band-Aid. Is that where this is?
Oh,
just a
for,
Band-Aid?
yes, oh, for sure. This is, we call it a permanent solution because we're putting the concrete in the ground and getting rid of the temporary. But as this area develops, and I'm not gonna dive deep into Wasatch and what's happening on there. We're trying to solve an immediate problem until a more permanent solution comes around, and given the way this is functioning, we could be years down the road before we see any upgrades or changes on this intersection.
Does the apartment building create some change in this design? I mean, has that been thought out as you think about the pork chop?
You're talking about
Over on Canyon Center.
Over there.
Right.
Right there.
over in here.
Mhm.
We have, it's the same amount of traffic. We haven't done any. This is the analysis that's done on this has been observational, and it's empirical data we've collected from the officers out on site, from Udot, from our staff being out there and watching this. It's
When would you be looking at something this fall?
Udot would like to proceed forward
Mhm.
very quickly.
But I
So
think,
before this season?
Yes.
Mhm.
I think Councilman Michael has brought this intersection up to us in the past, if I remember correctly, because of the cut through of Prospector and just how difficult that intersection is. And I know as we met with Josh from UDOT, we know that this intersection is a major concern going forward, not just the BEIS, but the impact on Big Cottonwood Canyon. And so from what Paul is saying, this, you put in a temporary solution that was it there just last year?
Last year.
Just last year, and that traffic pattern was unique to last year. I don't
So
know
we
why.
did this last year, and what you're telling us is that it proved effective.
Yes.
So the other suggestion is anything like this becomes permanent. I think we owe it to speak to one UDOT because it's their intersection as well, I guess. And two, speaking to 7-Eleven and saying, because if what you're saying is that they've probably had congestion and confusion in their own parking lot, that this may mitigate some of those concerns. So I personally am supportive with the understanding that we communicate to those other people before we make a final determination.
But so UDOT's asking us to pay $35,000 for the cost. Is that right?
Yes.
Of the
They're asking
75?
us to split the cost, whatever the cost
Well,
would be.
because
and it's the estimate.
because
Part
Fort
of it's
Union,
ours,
Fort Union is ours.
Yes, the pork chop itself is on city road. For sure. Yes.
Matt, I've got a question. How do you get into 7-Eleven if you're going west? What's the best way to do that?
You would turn
left.
up,
Turn left and then turn right.
turn down Wasatch and then turn right into.
Hit your brakes and hope you don't get hit.
And that's oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's terrible.
Matt, is it roughly a dozen days out of the ski year that we see people trying to do the 2-lane maneuvering through there?
This will occur, I hate to say ski days, but when the snow is heavy on the road and you don't see lanes and you're not familiar with some of these areas, I mean, on any given snow day, it can be like that. I've been up there at night when, it's snowing and it's cars, if you're unfamiliar, you kind of pull up and you see this big intersection. You don't see the other side. It's just kind of it gets to be a problem. It does, but snow days for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, but snow days, like we said, I've been caught in the 7-Eleven going in to get a drink on a snow day and couldn't get out for half an hour. You just stuck there. You can't go
I
anywhere.
would talk to 7-Eleven foremost, but then I would try one more season with the temporary candlesticks before making such a investment on a permanent fix. Maybe even like videotape a season's worth of interaction with the candlesticks. I think that along the east, along Wasatch Boulevard, that will be an eyesore as well. Of permanent candlesticks coming out of the concrete.
whatever we do on Wasatch is obviously temporary because when EAS will come through and it'll all change, whatever it is. But getting more information is never negative. If we get more information or more validation of the proposal, because I know it's a tough intersection. It is tough. We do have some residents, even members of the planning commission, who I think as someone mentioned, it's only so many days a year, but it's what Matt is saying. It's becoming more busy than less busy, and it's more year round than just ski season.
I mean, Paul, like I said, Paul's been spearheading this for the police department with Udot and with Public Works. I mean, he could probably answer a little better than I can as far as the violations or the traffic itself. So I'm just, we found that the Candlestick Poles post have actually done some good with,
Also throw in holidays, that adds holiday weekends, especially 3-day weekends, you contribute to an increased volume of traffic. So it's snow days and fresh powder days.
Yeah, so help me understand, so the candlesticks aren't enough, you want to raise that triangle, the pork chop?
So,
Like
what
what?
we saw was with the candlesticks, people trying to force it.
Sorry, Paul, thank you.
No, sorry. So what we saw was when you installed the candlesticks, there were certain separations. And people would force those.
Like try to go through?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because they don't affect that, or excuse me, they're not for them, they're for everybody else. So then we had to supplement those with cones. So every time it was put up and taken down, you had people trying to do that. We even had people trying to run over the cones because they wanted to get somewhere and they thought that they were entitled to do that. The raised barrier is a physical barrier that will prevent that from happening. The attenuator poles, or the cones, will be visual barriers to suggest they shouldn't do that. So it will educate them, it will change that traffic, that driving behavior.
there won't be as many, just by the way, they're there, one for snow plows.
Yeah.
To let the plow know, let's not hit that. But they're also for cars, for instance, if it is a snow day and you're at 7-Eleven, you see this in the way, it's a visual barrier as well. There won't be as many as there are now, but they will have some along there.
And then is the right-hand turn, is that, is there a mandatory no right turn?
This one?
Yeah, is there no right turn when the green light is
You
going
know,
for people to go south,
thought-
or is it?
I don't remember if it's
I
a
don't-
protected
I
right
think
or
it's-
not.
I don't think it's a
not.
protected right, it's a free
It's-
right.
It's not, would that enhance the safety at all?
That's a traffic.
We can
engineer issue.
certainly look at that, because if we are, in fact, like we said, if we do something like this and we take away this movement to Fort Union,
Mhm.
out of 7-Eleven, like the lights are what provides the gap in the traffic. So if we can provide another gap here with a, right on green only, or, no right on red, they can jump out and have another gap and get over here into this turn lane. So there's another option. We can certainly investigate that. This light is controlled by Udot, so we need to have that discussion.
But I would investigate those things, and I think historically as a city, we've always involved the impact of local businesses. I would still talk with 7-Eleven. We have the same scenario down at Zupa's, down at Fort
Yes.
Union,
Yes, we do.
where you cannot go in and go left. You can only come in and go right, and you have to come in on whatever that street is.
Yeah, of Union,
Yeah,
Park.
so we've got some other scenarios that are similar.
No, it's,
The work, not,
Park
they're
Center.
pretty busy, Park Center, yeah. So I would talk to 7-Eleven, and they may applaud it, but I'd hate to be here and say, wait a minute, you did this and you never even talked to us.
Yeah.
We do that on everything else we do. And because I think there's a lot of good points to this. And then from an engineering point of view, as professionals, as you engineers, can say, yes, this is best practice, it works. Aesthetics, I think we can mitigate that. But we want safety, we want traffic flow, but yet still protecting both the residents and prospector, as well as any businesses. But I do remember last year, and I go through this intersection a lot because I have a son lives not too far from Christina, and so I'm always going up there and driving this intersection. And there are times when flow is just fine, a lot of times fine, but then there are times when you have to really be careful. So
Removing this conflict point, I mean, it just makes this the primary entrance to the 7-Eleven rather than this.
no, that's still a primary entrance for everybody going
Well,
east.
I just, yeah, that conflict going across 2, 3, 4 lanes to get
out,
out,
yeah.
that's always a safety concern. That's probably where that.
And when you come out on the
Congestion comes
Wasatch,
from.
because you're going up a little hill and vision's a little different, you have to be a little more cautious. And I've done that 100 times too.
Have we resolved the litigation between 7-Eleven and CHPD?
What litigation would that be?
Didn't Laney file a lawsuit against CHPD?
I'm aware of no litigation.
I'm not aware of it.
But
But I think we can have our engineers talk and just see and try, and if it gets into an adversarial discussion on non-related topics, then obviously you have to back up and look at it differently. But I would approach it strictly as, from our public works people, here's something we're looking at as far as.
There's a new owner.
There's a new owner
Might have
for
to track it
7-Eleven.
down.
Let's find out and see what the approach is, because to me, we want the facts to speak for itself and the logic behind it.
Their buy-in would mean a lot, I would think.
Yeah, I think that conversation is certainly worth having. I mean, I can see what, my only comment would be that the curve going down Wasatch seems really long, but I'll just leave that as a comment and leave that to the people who know what
Can I
they're doing.
address that? It was a little shorter last time. The problem you have is people that want to go through the intersection and then flip an immediate U-turn, and they were trying to force that.
Oh.
So the further down the road you can force that,
Okay.
the behavior is trained out of them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they're traveling south and they're trying to miss this light, and if this thing gets backed up, then they try to make a loop and then. get
You
over
balance that
this.
against the one, I'm in the wrong place, so I'm gonna double right myself, or
They do silly things.
that's just my comment. You guys,
Yeah.
that's what you're supposed to figure out.
It was shorter last year, so I like and support the longer lane. I think that'll increase that safety net.
All right, I think that's good impact, good input to public safety and to,
Were you looking for an okay for?
Well, what I'm hearing right now, talk to 7-Eleven.
Yep.
Get either their buy-in or their concerns.
well, at least we should hear their concerns or issues before we proceed. And then you heard some questions on, just from an engineering perspective, I think there was something you said you were going to look at it, but again, can't remember what that was.
Dedicated right turn.
Oh, the light, yeah, the dedicated right with the light.
A couple of things and come back to us as soon as you're ready. We can put this on quickly.
Okay.
But I applaud the,
This is.
I applaud the assertiveness and trying to find a resolution rather than just waiting. I appreciate what we did last year. I heard a lot of positive comments about those temporary cones and stuff as far as working on that intersection. CWC, we had some positive comments on those efforts. Yeah.
I'm guessing that means UDOT's not.
Kudos
past
go to
their
the officers who
Drop dead time for doing it.
invented this concept.
I don't know
think-
yet. I need to talk
Sergeant
to them.
Nelson and Officer Hartney had great input.
All right.
And I think 7-Eleven may actually
So I,
embrace some of the idea because they have people cutting through there that aren't
Yeah,
customers.
exactly. So I'd like to hear that and understand that. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'll just reiterate,
Yeah.
I do appreciate, Matt, you taking a look at it, because trying to go northbound on Wasatch from 7-Eleven, that, I think that other light signal, looking at that might be helpful, because if you've got, you know what I mean, if you've got somebody making that quick right turn and
Yeah.
you're trying to make a left and they're not, and so I appreciate you looking at that.
Yeah.
That's my.
At least you have an advantage that, and that entrance from 7-Eleven is not right on the corner like it is like at the Chevron on Highland, where it's so
Yeah.
close, you don't have any time to even think.
all right, there's the feedback, and we'll, as fast as you want to get back to us, we'll get on the agenda if we can move quickly.
Thank you.
No, thank you, and thank you to our officers who came up with that. All right, looking to your agenda, item D is Parks, Trails, and Space Master Plan discussion and update after our public input in the previous meeting. So Mike, we'll turn over to you.
Yeah, thanks. This is actually pretty quick because the council has seen most of this, but at the last council meeting, we talked about really as a result of a lot of the public input we received, not at the planning commission level, but at the, at the council level at that public hearing in September, I believe. Was concerned over one particular future trail element. So this is all information the council's seen before, the purpose of the plan, and it's very long range in nature. And the city has no authority to go acquire land for trails that's owned privately without consent or without a willing seller or as part of a major redevelopment. So one alternate though we proposed to the urban trail section. Again, this is just a refresh. The particular trail that was causing a lot of concern was the green trail there, which was called the Little Cottonwood Creek Trail and the Little Cottonwood Creek Hillside Trail. They were presented as an A or a B option based on what was most feasible moving forward into the future. Hearing the feedback and concern, an alternate was proposed to follow the public rights of way instead with an urban trail element. So this would be, again, long range in the future, but urban trail system would be incorporated into the public rights of way largely on Danish Road, Creek Road, and then on Siesta Drive, which still gets us the desired connections we were looking for previously, but avoids a lot of the concerns that we heard at the last meeting. We pulled together these are just examples. Again, this is a long range plan. Nothing's been designed yet, but what an urban trail on a right of way can look like. These are a few local examples. Big Cottonwood Canyon Trail obviously has this. Two kind of flavors of it here. One on the left is essentially a wide sidewalk. The one on the right is an asphalt path that's physically separated from the roadway. It probably looks a lot like what Udot wants to do on Wasatch there. A few other examples nearby. You've got this kind of concept here where you have a little more room. You build a winding path, a wider sidewalk. Just examples, because there was still some concern of an urban trail shown on Siesta Drive and what that would be. But really, they can be designed to be sensitive to the context of where they are, and really pretty low key in nature to be, essentially in some cases a wider sidewalk than we would normally build. That again still allows us to achieve our desired vision and provide a safe trail amenity, but hopefully address some of the concerns we heard. A few other ones there, Murray and Sandy. I don't think we proposed to put a strip of grass down the middle of it. So that's where it is. We took this to Planning Commission as we were asked to do, and just in their work session, just updated them on the proposed change. They actually, they were a little disappointed in the change. They liked the concept of a creekside trail, and a few of the commissioners gave the feedback that, the big Cottonwood Canyon Trail as an example, the portions of it that are along the right of way are nice, but the portions along the creek are entirely different amenity altogether. They, however, understood the council's direction and the public input that the commission didn't hear, that the council heard. So they didn't think it was necessary to reopen the public hearing at the Planning Commission level. So they support the change, although they were slightly disappointed in moving the trail from the creek side. This goes to the Open Space Committee meeting tomorrow as well, just to give them an overview and an update and get their feedback. From there, these changes have been implemented in the draft plan online. So we are, after we get the Open Space Committee's feedback, are ready to bring it back to the council for consideration. We would propose in November sometime, but I'll defer to the council. Yeah, final approval of the plan. Yep, with these changes.
Mike, a little mention about this. Those that were disappointed must not understand the difference between Big and Little Cottonwood and the homes in the proximity of the creek. And I asked you, did you walk up the creek? You said you did. Now, did you, Mike?
Did I walk up the creek?
Yeah.
No, Andy did. Our senior planner walked up the creek.
Because the homes are just stacked one after another.
But
right
are there
against
parts
it.
of the Are there parts of it that there's possibilities for that?
So-
I mean, we just throw the baby out with the bathwater.
So getting the vision here was long range, 100 years in the future, neighborhoods start redeveloping and, let's say an acre lot wants to subdivide into 4 third-acre lots or, whatever it is. We don't know how, the city has changed a ton in the last 50 years. It's probably going to change a ton in the future. So in the original vision is as areas change and grow and develop, we'll require the trail connections along the creek. You're right, Doug. They don't necessarily fit in there today, but 100 years from now, they might because of how the city grows and changes and redevelops. So that was the intention. Again, staff is supportive of this, and I don't know where the commission is coming
I
from.
just
We're
didn't
just
want them
sharing
to
their
look at
feedback.
big Cottonwood and look at and compare it to this.
Sure, obviously the context is very different.
Right.
I mean, I think the comparison's okay, but the difference is where it is next to the creek on Big Cottonwood was, there are no houses, it's undeveloped. I mean, and we were given that easement by this, basically the sole property owner, this. On that long range context there's something in the plan that says, when there is a major development that we will be looking for easements. So again, as property changes hands or there's maybe some of those larger homes do that to where at least there's a mention that we did that type of an easement with the Czech City when they purchased it, so we would be able to fix the intersection. We did it with Zions Bank when they built their building. We made sure that they were back far enough so that we could, that was obviously much shorter term. It wasn't 100 years, it was 5 to 7, but that I would assume is in the goals of the plan is to create those types of connections long-term.
Yeah.
And looking for those types of easements.
With trails, we want an interconnected trail system throughout the city. That's why we still think the alternative proposal achieves that. The connection into Crestwood Park is critical, we feel, because that provides a connection potentially up to Park Ridge Drive up above.
And that's probably as big as the Big Cottonwood Canyon Trail, Creekside Trail is.
Yeah. So, but whether it's on the right of way or the creek, it still achieves that desired vision, which is why staff is supportive of this. But just
tend to
wanted to
agree with the planning commissioners who feel like it's a loss. A waterway feature is always 10 times more wow than a street.
There's no question, but after listening to 50, 75 residents who all came here and didn't have pitchforks, but there's always a challenge when we try and put in a trail after the property is fully developed, and many of those are fully developed. But like I try to communicate with them that we do not have eminent domain rights. We would never take anything away from them. But this is a good compromise. I think we're here to do what the citizens want. And it was clear unanimously that they did not want it there. So this is a compromise.
But they didn't even want like sidewalks or anything. They don't even want people to walk through the neighborhood. Did you hear that as well? And so that's what my struggle was. Wait
Yeah.
a second, you don't want this, and you don't want anybody to walk on your street either.
Well, and that goes on to, they don't want people in Crestwood Pool. They don't want people in Crestwood Park. You're right. There is that feel there, but this is a compromise that I understand that if my backyard goes all the way to the creek, having a trail in my backyard, I get it, but I do not accept not having urban trail going down Siesta into Crestwood Park. Crestwood Park is a regional park, a regional amenity. We have an obligation to provide access, both vehicular and trail. So that's a compromise. It doesn't take away the rights of a future council. If they see an opportunity because of development, I think that's fundamental. And we look at wherever we do any developments, if we've got something next door, we're going to try and grab an easement. Isn't that, I think that's our position and always has been. I assume it will continue to be.
I would want to hear from Parks, Trails, and Open Space
Yeah,
before we.
that's the next step.
Yeah, that's tomorrow night, and then
That's
we'll
the
come
next
back
step.
in November.
That was our goal, is send it back to Planning Commission, give them additional information, Parks, Trails, and Open Space, because that's their role, and then before it comes back to us. But
But to Scott's point, the document is still open enough that you can, as these things occur, you can take advantage of them. Like we haven't gutted it so that.
No,
Right.
that's a good point to clarify. Is this is a large plan and this is one very small aspect of it. And the plan does a lot of good. And once it's adopted, then yeah, then it becomes a tool that we can use to start building out this network as the city grows and changes or as funding opportunities become available.
And if there's a sentence in there that says, well, because you happen to have an acre on the side of the creek, we would like to get an easement for you on the creek.
It's a little more difficult without a specific line, but we could still refer to the overall goals and vision of the plan to.
It's kind of like, and we'll bring this up later, and thanks Christine, it's like the power line area that goes along Little Cottonwood Creek. We want to have access to that and have some port of the trail. We're not sure where it goes or where it connects, but if we don't do something as a council, once it's gone forever. And so whenever opportunities present itself in any of these areas, we want to look to make that happen. We look at the Dover Hill property, and sometimes we have to adapt to meet those opportunities. And here we can put something in place that gives access to Crestwood Park, the Crestwood Pool, and that regional amenity by an urban trail. And then any master plan is flexible. So as opportunities come in the future, it may be modified as things change. But this meets both needs. It meets those resident needs, so provides 90% of the plan to do everything else with meeting that need. So,
And just to clarify, not all of them thought there was going to be a huge fence and a freeway. I think it was brought up once going down through Siesta. There were a few people that didn't understand what the concept was, because you mentioned, well, you have a sidewalk there, right?
we have a sidewalk. Well, it's not that much different.
Right.
And if you look at the Big Common Canyon Trail, Mike showed two examples of that. Both where we took some right away from a resident and some we put right next to the road. But like Tally said, I think the next step is let's hear from the Parks Trail Open Space Committee, get their feedback. And, any further comments, questions? Okay, hearing none, we'll wait to hear their feedback. Two items quickly as part of the work session. One is you have a calendar of items before you, and one thing that you do not have in there I'd like to ask the council's feedback on as we plan. It's been proposed through discussion that for the month of December, we consider having one meeting. We've done that in some years in the past, I think, Scott, if I remember correctly. But that we move it to the second Tuesday rather than the first, because we've got some staff that are out of town, plus that seems to be an appropriate day, middle of the month. Want to know if anybody is opposed to that. I think it would be the 14th. 14th. That would be our single meeting in December. By then we'll have an election, but and we still have our two meetings in November.
Correct. So the second meeting in November will be the canvas.
Right. But we'll still have two meetings in November, and then we'll have our one meeting in December. Do that on the 14th. That'll be our single meeting. And then the swearing in of candidates will be January 3rd. Right? January 3rd.
First meeting will be
The Monday.
The Monday before the
We'll
Tuesday.
get more information about that. We'll be actually there for that. So that's one item. If there's no opposition, we'll proceed with that.
I might be missing that meeting because let me just check, because I wasn't anticipating the change.
We have it on your calendar.
Who's laughing?
You were talking about swearing in the next mayor. I'm just pointing it.
Oh.
It's all good. It's all good.
I'm taking notes.
All right, so
Unlikely.
we'll consider that.
It'll take me a minute to look and see. Like I said, I had scheduled some other meetings with other cities.
You want to keep it the first Tuesday?
If you just give me like 10 minutes and I'll.
Oh, yeah,
I'll
let's do it, yeah.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Okay, then we need to have a closed meeting for 15 minutes to talk about real estate. So I would entertain a motion to close the business meeting and open a closed session for the purpose of discussing property acquisition or real estate. You said that so well. I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, let the record show it's unanimous. We'll move into a closed session.